A tiny paw poked her shoulder. Part 1. The Wreckage. The explosion threw across the bridge like a broken doll. Red lights screamed. Alarms filled the air with terrible noise. She could smell burning metal and fear. Around her, the ship was dying. She was just a junior, a scientist who studied alien life. She was not a soldier. She was not a hero. She was 26 years old, and she had joined this cargo escort mission because it was supposed to be safe. A simple job, easy money, a chance to see new stars. Now those stars were full of pirate ships, and the UESS was breaking apart. "Escape pods," someone screamed. Did not see who. She only saw fire and smoke and falling bodies. Her legs moved before her brain could think. She ran through burning hallways. She climbed over broken walls. She found an escape pod with its door still open and threw herself inside. The door closed. The pod launched. Through the small window, she watched her ship explode into 1,000 pieces of light. 37 people had been on that ship. 37 friends and colleagues and strangers who had shared meals with her and told her jokes and complained about the food. Gone, all gone. Did not cry. She was too shocked to cry. She only sat in the cold metal pod and watched the stars spin around her as the small vessel fell toward an unknown moon below. The crash was violent. The pod hit frozen ground and rolled and tumbled and finally stopped against something hard. Its head struck the wall. Everything went black. When she woke, her body hurt everywhere. Blood dripped from a cut on her forehead, but she was alive. She checked her arms and legs. Nothing was broken. She found the emergency kit under her seat and cleaned her wound. She wrapped it with medical tape. She took deep breaths until her heart slowed down. Then she opened the pod door and looked at her new world. It was cold, very cold. The air was thin but breathable. Strange pale trees stretched in every direction, their white bark glowing softly in the light of an orange sun. The ground was covered in frost that crunched under her boots. In the distance, mountains rose like sleeping giants. Beautiful, terrifying, empty. Had emergency supplies for maybe 2 weeks. Food bars, water tablets, a thermal blanket, a small knife, a basic medical kit, a signal beacon that was completely destroyed in the crash. She was alone on an alien moon, with no way to call for help. For 3 days, she survived on pure stubbornness. She found a small cave near her crashed pod and made it her shelter. She collected frost and melted it for water. She ate her food bars slowly, saving as much as possible. At night, she wrapped herself in the thermal blanket and shivered until morning came. She did not give up. Humans did not give up. That was what her grandmother had always told her. The old woman would say, "Our family survived wars and famines and floods. We do not know how to quit. It is not in our blood." So did not quit. She explored. She learned. She mapped the forest in her mind. She found plants that might be edible and marked them for later testing. She found a frozen river with clean water beneath the ice. On the 4th day, she found the other wreckage. She almost missed it. The pale trees hid it well. But a glint of metal caught her eye, and she pushed through the frozen brush to find something that stopped her breath. A ship, an alien ship. It was beautiful even in death. Silver curves and flowing lines, like someone had built a vessel out of frozen music. Soft lights still blinked weakly on its broken hull. The design was nothing like human technology, nothing like anything she had seen in her studies. It had crashed recently, maybe the same day as her pod. Smoke still rose from its wounds. Approached carefully, her hand rested on the small knife at her belt. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all she had. She did not know what she would find inside. Pirates, enemies, something worse. She climbed through a hole in the hull. The interior was dark and cold. Emergency lights painted everything in weak blue. She saw strange symbols on the walls. Alien writing she could not read. She saw chairs designed for bodies very different from her own. She saw technology that hummed with dying power. And she saw the dead. They were huge. Each body was twice her size, covered in thick silver-blue fur. They had 6 limbs and faces that reminded her of wolves and bears mixed together. Their eyes were closed. Their massive bodies were arranged in a circle, all facing inward, all protecting something in the center. Parents, the word came to her mind without thought. These were parents protecting their children. Felt tears sting her eyes. She did not know these aliens. She did not know their names or their stories or their dreams, but she knew love when she saw it. She knew sacrifice. Then she heard the sound. A small, broken whimper, like a puppy crying in the dark. His heart stopped. She moved forward, stepping carefully around the bodies, trying to show respect for the dead. In the center of the circle, she found a nest made of torn fabric and broken technology. And in that nest, huddled together in a pile of shivering fur, were 5 small creatures. Cubs Bobby's children. The largest was barely the size of a house cat. Their fur was the same silver blue as the adults, but softer, fluffier. They had 4 eyes each, round and wet with tears. They were shaking so hard that the whole nest trembled. When they saw her, they froze. 8 pairs of eyes stared at her with pure terror. They did not run. They could not run. They had nowhere to go, so they just stared, waiting for death or mercy, not knowing which she would bring. Knelt slowly. She made herself small. She held out her empty hands so they could see she had no weapon ready. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice cracked. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." They did not understand her words. How could they? But maybe they understood her tone. Maybe they understood the softness in her voice, the tears on her cheeks, the way her hands trembled with emotion instead of violence. One of the cubs moved, the boldest one. It crawled forward, away from its siblings, toward this strange 2-legged creature that had invaded their broken world. It reached out with one tiny paw and poked her shoulder. Just a small touch, a question, a hope. The cub's siblings watched, frozen between terror and desperate need. They were Bobbies who had lost everything. Their parents were dead. Their ship was destroyed. They were alone on a frozen moon with no food, no warmth, no protection. And now there was only this strange creature with 2 eyes and no fur, and a face wet with water falling from her eyes. Looked at that tiny paw on her shoulder. She looked at those 4 frightened eyes. She thought about her training, unknown species, unknown biology, unknown diseases. She should maintain distance. She should observe and document. She should be a scientist. But she was also human. And humans had spent 10,000 years looking at helpless creatures and deciding to love them anyway. "Okay," whispered, her voice was barely a sound. "Okay, I've got you, I've got all of you." She opened her arms. The bold cub tumbled into them first, then another, then another. Soon all 5 were pressed against her chest, crying and shaking and holding onto her like she was the last solid thing in a universe that had broken apart. Held them tight. She did not know their language. She did not know what they ate. She did not know if she could keep them alive. But she knew one thing with perfect clarity. She would die trying. A tiny paw poked her shoulder, Part 2, Learning to be a World. The first week was the hardest thing had ever done in her life. She carried all 5 cubs back to her cave. It took 3 trips. They were small, but 5 small bodies were still heavy, and she was already exhausted. The cubs cried when she put them down to go back for the others. They cried when she picked them up again. They cried until they fell asleep against her chest, and even then they whimpered in their dreams. Did not sleep that first night. She sat against the cave wall with 5 alien Bobbies pressed against her body, and she wondered what she had done. She was not a mother. She had never taken care of children. She did not know anything about this species. She did not even know if they could survive on this moon. But they were warm against her. Their small hearts beat fast like little drums. Their soft fur smelled like smoke and fear, and something sweet she could not name. And when she tried to move, tiny paws grabbed her clothes and held on tight. They needed her, it was that simple. They needed her and she could not walk away. She gave them names because she could not bear to call them the cubs forever. Names made them real. Names made them hers. The bold one who had first touched her became. He was the bravest, always the first to explore, always the first to try new things. He reminded her of her younger brother, who had never been afraid of anything. The smallest one became. She hid behind the others and trembled at every sound. Her eyes were bigger than the rest, and they followed everywhere with desperate hope. She never let go of clothes if she could help it. The twins who moved together became Bora. They did everything in perfect sync. They ate together, slept together, walked together. When one turned left, the other turned left. It was beautiful and strange. The last one, the one who watched everything with quiet intelligence, became. He rarely made sounds. He only observed. His 4 eyes missed nothing. When did something, he studied her like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. On the second day, tried to feed them. She broke a protein bar into small pieces and offered them to the cubs. Brave as always, took a piece and ate it. The others watched him carefully. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then got sick, very sick. He vomited for 6 hours. His small body shook with pain, held him and cried and apologized and promised she would do better. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She only held this tiny creature she had known for 2 days and begged the universe not to take him away. Survived, but learned her first hard lesson. Human food was poison to them. She could not feed them what she had. She needed to find something else. She watched them carefully after that. She paid attention to everything they did. When they sniffed the air, she sniffed too. When they turned away from something, she noted it. When they showed interest in certain plants, she collected samples. It took 4 days of careful observation, but she finally understood. The pale roots that grew near the frozen river were safe. Certain blue berries that grew on low bushes were safe. A kind of moss that covered some rocks was safe. Everything else made them sick or they refused to touch. Built a new routine around their needs. Every morning she went out to collect food. She dug up roots with her bare hands until her fingers bled. She picked berries until her back ached. She scraped moss from rocks until her arms were sore. Then she brought everything back to the cave and fed her cubs. They ate from her hands. They trusted her completely. When was scared of a new food, she would only eat it if held it for her. When found a root he particularly liked, he would bring one too and push it toward her mouth, confused when she did not eat it. The nights were the hardest and the sweetest. The moon's nights were long and bitter cold. The temperature dropped so low that frost formed on the cave walls. His thermal blanket was not enough. She was freezing. They were freezing. So they slept together, all 6 of them curled into a pile of bodies and fur and the thin blanket. The cubs pressed against her from every direction. Their body heat kept her warm. Her body heat kept them warm. They breathed together, slow and steady, a family made of desperation and love. The cubs needed touch, learned this quickly. Their species was clearly very social. They groomed each other constantly, running their small paws through each other's fur. They slept in piles even when it was warm enough to spread out. When tried to keep distance during the day to give herself space to work, they became distressed. They cried. They stopped eating. They pulled at her clothes and whimpered until she returned. So she stopped trying to keep distance. She let them climb on her. She let them sit in her lap while she worked. She let ride on her back while she collected food. She let hold her hand while they explored. She became their anchor, their safety, their world. Learned first. He watched her mouth when she spoke. He watched her hands when she gestured. His intelligent eyes tracked every movement, every expression, every sound she made. 3 weeks after the crash, he said his first word. His voice was strange, whistling and soft, not made for human sounds, but the word was clear, her name. He had learned her name. Burst into tears. She could not help it. She was exhausted and scared and alone, and this small alien child had just spoken her name like it was the most important word in the universe. Touched her face with his tiny paw. His 4 eyes were confused. He did not understand why water was falling from her eyes. He looked at the others, worried. They gathered around, patting her arms and legs, making soft sounds of concern. Happy tears, managed to say. She pointed at her eyes, then smiled. Happy, not sad, happy. Studied her face. Then his tail curled in a way she had never seen before. Later, she would learn that this meant happiness, affection, love. She taught them everything she could. She pointed at objects and said their names: rock, tree, water, sky. She drew pictures in the frost with sticks. She used her damage to show them images of Earth, of humans, of the galaxy they had both been lost in. The cubs taught her too, showed her which plants were medicine for stomach pain. Bora and taught her the warning call for the large predators that lived in the mountains, showed her how to find water under the deepest ice. They were survivors, both species, human and though did not know that name yet. They had both been thrown into a hostile world with nothing but each other, and together they were learning to live. One night during a terrible storm climbed into his lap. The wind screamed outside the cave. Thunder shook the ground. The small cub was shaking with fear, her 4 eyes wide and wet. Held her close. She hummed a song her grandmother used to sing, a Korean lullaby about the moon and stars and a mother's love that never ends. Pressed her face against his chest. Her shaking slowed, her breathing calmed, and then in a voice barely louder than a whisper she spoke her first word. Mother. His heart broke and healed at the same time. She looked at the other cubs, all pressed against her, all watching with eyes full of trust and love. Yes, she whispered, I'm your now, and I promise I will get you home, whatever home means, I will find it for you. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the small cave, 6 hearts beat together, and the darkness did not seem so dark anymore. A tiny paw poked her shoulder. Part 3, The Signal. 2 months on the frozen moon, changed in ways she never expected. Her hands were rough now, covered in small scars from digging roots and climbing rocks. Her face was thinner. Her hair was longer and wild. She had lost weight from the hard work and limited food, but her eyes were bright with purpose, and her heart was full in a way it had never been before. The cubs had changed too. They were no longer the trembling, terrified Bobbies she had found in the wreckage, had grown bold and confident, always exploring, always bringing back treasures from his adventures. Was still shy, but she smiled now, and her fear had transformed into gentle caution. And Bora had developed their own secret language, speaking in synchronized whispers that made laugh, and had become her greatest helper, learning new words every day, translating between and his siblings. They were a family, strange and impossible but real. Spent weeks working on the distress beacon. Her own equipment was destroyed, but the alien ship had technology she could use. She did not understand most of it. The symbols meant nothing to her. The controls were designed for hands with 6 fingers, not 5, but she was stubborn and she learned. She took pieces from both ships, human wires connected to alien power sources, Earth engineering mixed with technology from stars she could not name. It was ugly. It was dangerous. It sparked and smoked and nearly caught fire twice. But on day 73 it worked. A pulse of energy shot into the sky. A signal reaching out into the void, screaming one message over and over: we are here. We are alive. Please find us. Sat back and watched the beacon blink. The cubs gathered around her, not understanding what it meant but sensing her hope. Someone will come, she told them. Someone will find us. She did not know if that was true. She did not know if anyone was looking. But she had to believe. For them, she had to believe. While they waited, life continued. The cubs grew stronger and smarter every day. Started bringing back food on his own. He would disappear into the pale forest and return hours later with roots in his paws and pride in his eyes. Once, He brought back a small creature he had caught. He presented it to like a gift, confused when she gently explained that she could not eat it. "For you," he said in broken standard. His vocabulary was growing, though not as fast as hunt, eat. His heart melted. She praised him for his skill and helped him prepare the food for himself and his siblings instead. He ate it with great satisfaction, his tail curling with happiness. And Bora had become impossible to separate. They finished each other's sentences. They knew what the other was thinking without speaking. When asked them questions, they answered in perfect unison, which was both adorable and slightly unsettling. "Are you two always going to do everything together?" she asked once. They looked at each other, then back at her, then in perfect sync, "Yes," was still the clingiest. She followed everywhere, holding onto her clothes, riding on her back, sleeping pressed against her side. But her fear had become love. She clung to not because she was scared of the world, but because was her favorite thing in it, and was becoming something extraordinary. He had found damaged and figured out how to use it. The device still worked, though the screen was cracked and some functions were broken. It contained educational programs, children's encyclopedias, language databases. Consumed it all. His 4 eyes could scan text at incredible speed. He learned human languages like they were games. Within weeks, he was reading at an adult level. He asked questions that she sometimes could not answer. He said one evening, looking up from the "Humans are persistence predators. This means you chase things until they give up." Laughed. "Something like that. A long time ago on Earth, our ancestors would chase animals for hours and hours until the animals were too tired to run anymore." His head tilted in that way that meant he was thinking deeply. "You are chasing us until we give up being scared." The question hit hard. She had to think about it for a moment. "Maybe," she admitted, "maybe that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just going to keep loving you until you believe it. Is it working?" His tail curled in the gesture of affection she had come to treasure. "Yes, it is working." The response came on day 73, just hours after the beacon started transmitting. Was collecting water from the frozen river when she heard the sound, a deep rumble in the sky. She looked up and saw something breaking through the clouds, a ship, huge and angular, covered in sharp lines and strange markings. Her heart raced. She ran back to the cave, gathered the cubs, and watched as the massive vessel descended toward their small camp. It was not a human ship. She knew that immediately. The design was too alien, too different from anything she had studied. The markings were symbols she did not recognize. The energy signature made her skin tingle with unfamiliar power. The ship landed 100 meters from the cave. A door opened. Figures emerged. They were tall, multiple limbs covered in gleaming armor. Their heads had no faces she could read, only smooth plates with sensors instead of eyes. They moved with mechanical precision, scanning everything, studying the environment like soldiers assessing a battlefield. One of them stepped forward and spoke. The voice was translated by a device, turning alien sounds into words could understand. "We are the Galactic Enforcement Authority. We have detected the distress signal from the diplomatic vessel. Are there survivors?" That must be the name of the cub species. His mind raced. The diplomatic vessel. These small cubs were part of a diplomatic mission. Important people, important children. "Yes," she said carefully. "There are survivors, 5 children. I've been taking care of them since the crash." The authority officers exchanged looks, or what passed for looks among beings without visible eyes. One of them scanned the cave, then the cubs pressed against his legs. "The heirs are alive," the officer announced, heard surprise in the translated voice. "This is unexpected. The human kept them alive." "Of course I kept them alive," said, confused by the surprise. "They're children." "They are alien children. You are human. Humans are new to the galaxy. We did not expect." The officer trailed off. Then, with what might have been respect, "You have done well, but the children must come with us now. They will be returned to their people." The cubs pressed harder against legs, grabbed her hand, whimpered. "What about me?" asked. "You will be debriefed about the pirate attack. Then you will be returned to human space. The children they belong with." Something cold settled in his chest. She looked down at the 5 small creatures who had become her whole world, at its brave face, at its frightened eyes, at and Bora holding each other, at watching everything with quiet understanding. "No," she said. The authority officer stopped, clarifying. "I said no." His voice was stronger now. "You can't just take them. They've been traumatized. They lost their parents. They've been surviving on an alien moon for over 2 months. They need stability. They need someone they trust. They need me. You are not qualified to." "I'm the only one who kept them alive." His voice rose. "I learned what they eat by watching them get sick. I held them through every nightmare. I taught them to trust again. You don't get to just take them like cargo." Before the officer could respond, stepped forward. He was so small compared to the armored giants. But he stood tall, his little chest puffed out, and spoke in clear universal standard. "She is he said. "We stay with her." The cubs formed a line beside him, trembling but determined, and Bora speaking together. "She is our mother," calm and certain. "We do not leave her. She does not leave us." The authority officers were silent, did not know if they were impressed or confused or angry. She only knew that she would fight every one of them if she had to. But she hoped desperately that she would not have to fight alone. A tiny paw poked her shoulder. Part 4. The Trial of Warmth. The Galactic Authority did not understand love. They understood laws. They understood procedures. They understood the correct way to process orphaned children of diplomatic importance, but love was not in their databases. And the cubs were taken to a massive station orbiting a planet she had never seen before. It was beautiful and terrifying. Millions of beings from hundreds of species walked through corridors of light and metal. Ships came and went like birds in an endless sky. The station hummed with power and purpose and the weight of galactic civilization. The cubs pressed close through all of it. They held her hands. They hid behind her legs, refused to walk and had to be carried. Even Brave was pale with fear, his 4 eyes darting everywhere, overwhelmed by so much strangeness. "It's okay," whispered to them. "I'm here, I'm not leaving you." But she was not sure she could keep that promise. The authority brought experts, so many experts, who wanted to examine the cubs' mental state, cultural specialists who wanted to assess the damage of being raised by an alien, medical doctors who wanted to check their physical health, representatives from the government who wept at seeing the children alive, then frowned at seeing them attached to a human. Everyone had opinions, everyone had concerns, everyone thought they knew what was best for the children. No one asked the children what they wanted. The first separation was the worst. An authority official decided that the cubs needed to be examined alone, without influence. They took them to a different room. They promised it would only be for a few hours. Screamed. She screamed so loud and so long that could hear her through the walls. She screamed until her voice broke, and then she kept screaming in silence, her mouth open, her body shaking, her eyes wild with terror. Tried to go to her. Officers held her back. "It's for their own good," they said. "They need to learn to be independent. This attachment is not healthy." 2 hours later they brought back. She had scratched herself bloody trying to escape. She had bitten an officer who tried to hold her. She had not stopped shaking the entire time. When she saw, she launched herself into her arms and did not let go for 3 days. After that, the experts changed their approach. They tried gentler separation, short periods apart, calm environments, patient caregivers. It did not work. And Bora stopped eating when authority nutritionists tried to feed them. The food was technically correct for their species, but it was not the way prepared it, not served in the way they knew, and they refused it. They began to lose weight. The doctors panicked. Bit an official who tried to physically remove him from side. He did not bite to hurt. He bit to protect. When they asked him why, he said simply, "She is my, you are not." Took a different approach. He simply stopped speaking. To anyone except experts asked him questions. He stared at them in silence. Doctors tried to examine him. He cooperated physically but gave them nothing else. His four intelligent eyes watched everything, understood everything, and said nothing. "This is abnormal bonding," a psychologist declared. She was a large female with golden fur and kind eyes, but her words were sharp. The trauma of losing their parents has caused them to imprint on the human as a replacement figure. This attachment is not real. It is a psychological response to crisis. Given proper time and treatment, they will transfer their attachment to appropriate caregivers. Wanted to scream. She wanted to grab this expert and shake her and ask if she had ever held a child through a nightmare, if she had ever learned a new species biology through trial and error, if she had ever slept in a pile of warm fur in a frozen cave and felt like the luckiest person in the universe. But screaming would not help, so did something else. She requested a formal tribunal. The right existed in galactic law. Any being could request a tribunal to determine guardianship of orphan children. It was rarely used. It almost never succeeded when the petitioner was a different species than the children. But the right existed and claimed it. The tribunal chamber was vast. 12 representatives from 12 different species sat in a curved row, each one a judge with power over her future and the futures of her cubs. Authority officers lined the walls. Diplomats sat in observation seats, their faces unreadable. And in a special observation area, protected by transparent barriers, sat 5 small cubs who watched there with 8 pairs of eyes full of trust. Stood alone in the center of the chamber. She had no lawyer, she had no advocate, she had only her voice and her truth. "You think I don't know I'm wrong for them?" Her voice echoed in the huge space. The judges leaned forward, surprised by her opening. I can't teach them their songs or their history. I can't give them fur to press against. I don't have 6 arms to hold them properly. I don't know their traditions or their ceremonies or the right way to raise a child." She paused, her eyes found the cubs, was pressing against the barrier, his paw flat against the glass, was crying silently, and Bora held each other, was perfectly still, watching. "But I held them when they cried. I learned what they could eat by watching them get sick and doing better the next time. I let them sleep against me every night for 3 months because being alone was worse than any discomfort. I became their world because that's what they needed, and I didn't care if I was qualified." Her voice cracked. She let it crack. She was not trying to be strong. She was trying to be honest. "Humans do this. We find things that need us and we decide to love them. It's not logical. It's not efficient. The galaxy thinks we're primitive, and maybe we are. But when a tiny paw poked my shoulder and asked for comfort, I couldn't walk away. I will never walk away." The chamber was silent. 12 judges stared at her. 12 species tried to understand a love that crossed every boundary they knew. Then spoke. He had been silent for weeks. He had refused to say a single word to anyone except. But now, in front of the entire tribunal, he stood and spoke in perfect universal standard. The word means mother in her language, but the word it means one who shapes the soul. Our parents gave us life, but she gave us the will to keep living. His voice was calm. His 4 eyes were steady. He was the of the cubs, and he had chosen this moment to use that intelligence. She did not have to save us. She was alone and scared and hurt. She could have walked away. Any logical being would have walked away. But she is human, and humans are not logical about love. He looked at his siblings. They nodded. They had practiced this, realized with sudden emotion. They had planned this together. "She has shaped us," continued. We are hers. This is not trauma. This is not confusion. This is truth. We choose her, and we will keep choosing her forever no matter what this tribunal decides." He sat down. The chamber remained silent. A diplomat stood. Tears ran down her golden fur. "We have lost so much," she said softly. "So many of our people died in the attack. These children are all that remain of a great family. We wanted them back. We wanted to heal our wounds with their presence." She looked at the human who had done the impossible. "But we cannot heal our wounds by creating new ones. The children have spoken. Their souls have been shaped. We withdraw our objection to human guardianship." The tribunal voted. It was not unanimous. It was never going to be unanimous, but it was enough. When the verdict was read, 5 small bodies crashed through the observation barrier. How they escaped, no one ever figured out, and slammed into so hard she fell backward. She lay on the floor of the tribunal chamber, laughing and crying, covered in cubs who were crying too, their paws patting her face, their voices calling her name. Above them, 12 judges of 12 species watched a new kind of family being born. A tiny paw poked her shoulder. Part 5. A new kind of family. 20 years passed like a dream. Sometimes looked back at the woman she had been, young, scared, alone on a frozen moon, and could not believe how much had changed. That woman had been a junior scientist with no experience and no hope. This woman was a mother of 5, a galactic celebrity, and the founder of the first cross-species family integration program in recorded history. But some things never changed. When she woke up on quiet mornings, she still remembered the weight of 5 small bodies pressed against her chest. She still remembered the cold cave and the orange sun, and the sound of tiny voices calling her for the first time. They had settled on a mixed-species colony on the edge of human and space. At first, the colony was suspicious of them. A human raising children. It was strange. It was unnatural. It was wrong. But children have a way of changing minds. When the neighbors saw carrying groceries while rode on her back, they softened. When they watched defend his mother from rude strangers with fierce loyalty, they respected her. When Embora charmed everyone they met with their synchronized sweetness, they fell in love with the whole family. Within a year, and her cubs had become local legends. Within 5 years, they had become symbols of hope across 2 species. The cubs grew up. It happened too fast, as it always does for mothers. One day they were small enough to carry. The next day they were taller than her. Grew into his boldness. He became a scout, exploring dangerous planets and unknown territories. He was the first to join a human search and rescue team, and he used the skills he had learned on that frozen moon to save hundreds of lives. He sent videos from distant worlds. He showed her strange plants and alien skis and creatures she could not name. Every video ended the same way. "Coming home soon. Save some of that stew for me." Never fully lost her clinginess, but she transformed it into something beautiful. She became a therapist, specializing in cross-species trauma. She helped children who had lost everything find reasons to hold on. She taught other families how to love across the boundaries of species and culture. "I know what it feels like to be scared and alone," she told her patients. "But I also know what it feels like to be found. You will be found too, I promise." And Bora remained inseparable. They became diplomats, working as a perfect team. They specialized in human relations, traveling between worlds, building bridges, solving conflicts. "If our family can work," they said to skeptics, "anything can work." And became a scholar. The brilliant cub who had learned to read on a cracked grew into the greatest of his generation. He studied human attachment behavior. He wrote papers and books and gave lectures across the galaxy. His most famous work was titled The Persistence of Love: How Humans Choose Their Families. It was translated into 47 languages. It changed how dozens of species understood humanity. It won awards and sparked debates and made people think. In the dedication, he wrote, "For my mother who chased us until we stopped being afraid, who held us until we remembered how to be warm, who became our world when we had nothing. Humans call this love, they call it soul-shaping. I call it the reason I am alive." Read those words 1,000 times. She cried every time. Years passed. His hair turned gray. Her face gained lines. Her body slowed down. But her heart remained full and her home remained noisy with the chaos of family. The cubs visited often. They brought their own partners, their own children, their own stories. The small house on became a gathering place for a sprawling, impossible family that crossed species and cultures, and everything the galaxy had once said was impossible. Were even stranger than her children. Half other things she could not pronounce. They had fur in strange colors. They had too many limbs or not enough. They spoke languages she would never master. But they all called her grandmother. They all fought to sit in her lap. They all begged for her stories. One evening during a family gathering, a storm rolled across. Thunder shook the windows. Lightning painted the sky. The power flickered twice before stabilizing. The adults continued their conversations, used to such weather. But one small figure left the crowd and crossed the room too. She was tiny, his daughter, silver-blue fur like her grandmother, but with patches of gold from her mother's side. Her 4 eyes were wide with fear as the thunder boomed again. She climbed into his lap without asking permission. She pressed against his chest. She trembled with each flash of lightning. A tiny paw poked his shoulder. "Grandmother," the small voice whispered, "I'm scared, tell me a story." His eyes grew wet. She wrapped her arms around this precious child, this miracle, this gift, this proof that love could cross any boundary, and held her close. "Once, a long time ago," began, her voice soft and warm, "a ship crashed on a frozen moon. A young woman named was all alone. She was scared and hurt and she didn't know what to do." The small body in her arms relaxed slightly. The storm continued outside, but it seemed far away now. But then she found something wonderful. She found 5 small cubs who needed help. They were scared too. They had lost their parents. They had lost everything. "Like you, grandmother." "Yes, little one, like me. We had both lost everything, but then something magical happened." "What happened?" Smiled. She looked across the room at her family, was arm wrestling with his brother-in-law, was helping a young patient who had come to visit, and Bora were debating something with perfect synchronization, was reading to a group of children who hung on his every word. "We found each other," said, "and we decided to be a family. It didn't matter that we were different. It didn't matter that everyone said it was impossible. We loved each other and that was enough." The small cub looked up at her with wonder in her 4 eyes. "Is that a true story, grandmother?" Kissed the top of her furry head. "The truest story I know." Outside, the storm began to fade. The thunder grew distant. The lightning stopped. But inside the small house on, a grandmother held a child who was not her species, surrounded by a family that should not exist, and felt more at peace than she had ever felt in her life. Somewhere out in the vast galaxy, other tiny paws reached for comfort. Other small voices cried for help. Other children waited, alone and afraid, hoping someone would find them. And somewhere a human would find them. That was what humans did. They found things that needed them. They decided to love them. They held on and never let go, no matter how hard the universe tried to pull them apart. It was not logical. It was not efficient. It was not the way other species did things. But it was the most human thing of all. And that, perhaps, was why the galaxy would never forget the story of a young woman on a frozen moon, 5 orphaned cubs, and a tiny paw that poked her shoulder and asked for comfort. Some families are born, some families are made, and some families are found in the wreckage of everything that was supposed to destroy them. Those are the families that last forever.